Hello everybody, it's good to be back. Hope you're enjoying your study of probability. In today's study of probability, we are moving on to a compound event. Compound event simply consists of two or more events. Yes, that is the first vocabulary word of the day, and you should put that into your vocabulary notebook. If you need more time to copy that, you can pause the video momentarily. Okay. All right, in today's compound event, we're going to be using two or more independent events. In case you haven't guessed yet, yes, there are independent events and dependent events. We're not going to learn about dependent events until tomorrow, so today we're just going to talk about the independent events. Independent events are events where the occurrence of one event does not affect the probability of the occurrence of the other event. In other words, what happens in the first event does not affect what happens in the second event. So if you had a swim meet, if your team wins the first event, the butterfly, that has nothing to do with who's going to win the second event, which could be the freestyle. Again, if you need more time to copy that, just pause the video momentarily. Okay, let me give you an example of a compound event. A compound event, remember, consists of two events. So our first event is going to be the toss of a coin. And of course, it can come up heads or it can come up tails. Our second event is going to be the drawing of a random playing card. And we have three here: a jack, a queen, and a king. So those are two separate events, and we're going to call them one compound event. Okay? So when we do these events, when we flip the coin, we can have heads or tails. So the possible outcomes for flipping the coin are either heads or tails. Let's say I flip the coin and it comes up heads. Okay. Does that affect the second event, which card I'm going to randomly draw? Probably not. In fact, definitely not. If I mix these up totally randomly and draw a card, I could come up with a jack, a queen, or a king. Let's go ahead and draw one randomly and see what happens. I came up with a jack. All right. So I had the outcome here that was heads and then jack. So that's the first outcome. This outcome here stands for heads and then jack. Heads, jack. Okay? I could have had heads and then queen, or I could have had heads and then king. So those are three possible outcomes of that compound event. Now also, when I flipped the coin, it could have come up tails. Okay? If it come up tails, when I drew the cards, again, they're independent events, so it doesn't affect at all which one I draw. So this time, when I mix these up randomly, and I draw one, and I get a king. All right? So I could get a king, a queen, or a jack. All right? And again, the event that came up this time was first tails, and then king. So tails and king. Other possibilities would have been tails and then queen, and tails and then jack. All right? So you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possible outcomes. Okay? It can get more complicated when you have more than two events. So this time I'm going to have a coin toss and a dice roll and a random drawing of paper clips. Okay? So this time there's three events, all right? The first event is a coin toss, and it could come up heads or tails. So there's two possible outcomes for that, right? It could come up heads, or it could come up tails. Then I'm going to roll the die. And as you know, there's 6 sides to a die, numbered 1 through 6. So there are 6 possible outcomes for that. So after heads, I could get a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. Then I gotta draw one of these randomly. So, I'd put them inside a cup, shake them up or something, pull one out. And obviously there's two possible outcomes for that. It could be white or it could be red. All right? All right, so in this case where I had a head, a 2, and a, randomly pick one here, and a red, okay? A head, a 2, and a red. Here it could have been white or red, but this is the one that I came up with, okay? Which was heads, and then 2, and then red, all right? So it'd be two outcomes for each one of these, all right? White, red, white, red, white, red, white, red, okay? And hopefully you understand what all these outcomes mean. Like this outcome right here, you gotta kind of trace it back. It was first heads, then a 1, and then a red, okay? You see I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 so far, but I have a whole bunch more to make here because it could have come up tails. If it come up tails, when I roll the die, they're independent, so I still could have come up with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. After I did that, I'd still have to draw one of the paper clips. I could get white or red. So let's see. Let's pick, let's say, this one right here. Follow it back, and this one stands for tails on the first event, a 2 on the second event, and then a white on the third event. So I have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 events. So 12 outcomes here, 12 outcomes here, total of 24 possible outcomes. What you have to do today is take some events like this and figure out how many outcomes there are going to be. Now right here we figured out there are going to be 24 outcomes. Remember on our first one, we figured out that there were 6 possible outcomes. Now one way to do that is to draw these tree diagrams. And that will give you how many outcomes it has. But as you can tell, that's going to be kind of a pain if you got to do a whole bunch of these. So yes, there is a shortcut. Da-da-da-da, the shortcut. All right? The shortcut for this one right here where we had the coin toss and then the card draw, we came up with, remember, 6 possible outcomes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those were the 6 possible outcomes. The shortcut to doing that is, remember that with the coin toss, there were 2 possible outcomes. With the card draw, there were 3 possible outcomes, Jack, Queen, or King. Take those 2 numbers, multiply them together, you get the number of outcomes. Does that work for all of these? Yes. So we go back to this one, okay? Where we had the coin toss, the die roll, and the random paper clip. We came out with 24 outcomes, okay? For the coin toss, there were 2 possible outcomes, heads or tails. So we'll write down the 2 for that one, okay? For the die toss, there were 6 possible outcomes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Then for the paper clip draw, there were again 2 possible outcomes, white or red. We just multiply these together. 2 times 6 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. And that's how we get our total number of outcomes. So that's the shortcut for today. This is the understanding of what it really means. And you are ready to begin.